Welcome to one more edition of Politics and Random. Berto Will is your host. Today we have the honor of speaking to Diana Martinez Alexander. She is a progressive leader, activist, and former candidate in Houston, Texas. And she's going to have a lot to speak about the elections here in Harris County. Diana Martinez, welcome to Politics Done Right. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Well, look, thank you thank us for having you. You wrote a piece that I think should be a very important piece for everybody to see in Harris County. First of all, what made you write the op-ed titled Alexandra Miller's Gang of Liars, Bigots, and MAGA Extremists? A lot of people would call that fairly harsh. But in today's politics, you have to call a whatever a whatever. Talk to me.
Well, we have to be very plain that people are going to do whatever it takes to what they call regain power in Harris County and basically take us backwards into the days where we weren't addressing the needs of various communities, marginalized communities, and looking at that lens, which we need to have in governance and that sense of fairness. And the fact is also they're resentful that we have a young Latina who is very decisive, very competent, and they want to take her down. So they're going to use whatever tools they have at their disposal.
Let me tell you, Deanna, I call myself an activist journalist because what I've seen over the decades that I've been following all the politics is that the old form of journalism no longer works because it is abused by those who want to retain power because of the balance that people like to talk about. Now, this is going to be an unbalanced interview, and I'll tell you specifically why. And I tell my audience, I'm very honest with my audience. I hate to see exactly what you just mentioned, and people use different types of facades to cover the reality. That's why your article was so important. So tell me a little bit about who you have after doing your research. Who is Alexandra Miller, this person that is attempting to go against Lina Hidalgo on false pretenses?
Well, she purports herself to be a moderate, but when during the primary season and the runoff season, I ran into her supporters, and they have, the military green shirts, join Alex's army. And I know she does have a background of being a veteran, but there seem to be some undercurrents of that militant type persona that we see with, the Punisher stickers and the 3%ers. And she really does appeal to that whilst also maintaining that mainstream of not being, more moderate in her positions. And looking at her website, she does refute a lot of Lina Hidalgo's accomplishments and tries to spin them into, the law and order. We need to focus on law and order type attitude and cut the waste. But when you look at who is behind her and who is giving her funds, you see that it's very directed to make sure that we change the trajectory that we have in Harris County and take it back into, a regression.
Now, you brought up law and order. I've been fairly upset with those in power right now for not going on this law and order issue head on. I find too often we placate the other side. Houston has a gun problem right now. There's a lot of shoot 'em ups. In fact, in North Houston earlier this week, I believe, there were two people got out of a car and started firing at another car. One of the reasons, in my humble opinion, we see that is that our Republican legislature has legislated guns in anyone who's 18 or above's hands. More guns, more violence, I think, and I wonder, you explain to me, is it's Lina Hidalgo's folks or you yourself making sure that the narrative goes out there that the reason for the violent crimes increase in guns in Harris County and beyond are a direct result of what the legislation from Abbott, Patrick, and all the others, including who wants to be elected judge in Harris County right now, that it's their fault because of the policies?
I believe there's an issue with accepting the premise of their question. So we're not immediately reshifting the focus back on those policies, those lax gun, rights policies and laws that have allowed the situation to manifest. And that's what we need to look at. And we also need to look at the real trajectory of crime that's actually going down according to some studies, but it just appears as though certain events capture our attention more frequently because they are more violent. That doesn't mean to say that gun reform is unnecessary. I am a proponent of gun policy reform and having common sense gun legislation. However, you juxtapose that towards the people who, just for fun get into the whole I'm a gun toting type person, and they have, the regalia, they carry the guns and they make a show of it. So it's really two different issues altogether.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to her attacking Lina Hidalgo's positions on law and order,
Mhm.
how do you not placate that, but how do you give that context based on what's occurring in Harris County right now?
So if we look at what Mueller's argument is that we should not be spending money on things like the immigrant legal defense fund, correct? And spending more money on law enforcement. But the thing is that if we're talking about uplifting families, then we want to make sure that we keep families intact, and that fund provides more guarantee that these families can remain intact. They will require less financial support if they're able to, work and stay together, and it causes less trauma in the community. And so those are things that are preemptive steps to make sure that we really help a community and a family thrive rather than trying to fix it, after the fact with increased law enforcement. That does nothing to help a family.
If I understand you correctly, and I think that is a case many people make, that if you nip the problem, I mean, let's say I'll just use an example: latchkey kids,
Mm,
because they're latchkey kids, because there isn't the funding
mhm,
to help a parent put a kid in the places necessary
mhm.
to prevent possibility of them getting errant. You fix the problem earlier on. You invest in the problem earlier on. You don't have to go back into law enforcement, where law
Right.
enforcement turns out to be not a rehabilitation station in effect, but a station where you actually produce better criminals. True?
Yeah, it's punitive. I mean, and so, we're concentrating on uplifting people, not punishment. And so I think that when we look at the people who are supporting Mueller, these are people who are very rampant anti-LGBTQ. Um, I don't activists, I guess you can say.
Right.
I don't really know
Anti,
how,
yeah.
yeah. And so I think that we have to be very careful in constructing this idea that she is moderate because of who you are, the company you keep. And if you're willing to take money from people and endorsements from people, then you're willing to hitch your wagon to theirs. And we have to be very clear about that.
Now, it's been stated that I think Austin is trying, again, the Republican folks in Austin are trying to create some sort of a voter type audit here in Harris County again. And I think if I recall correctly from your article, that you also state that Mueller actually supports some sort of a voter technique that could be considered voter suppression.
Yeah, she hasn't said one way or another. She's kind of been wishy-washy on whether or not she accepts the results from the 2020 election, which I think that should be a litmus test for any elected official. And Harris County judge does have a huge part in the elections process. If
Right.
they call for some sort of um, what's the word I'm looking for? When they validate the votes, and when they also like do investigations and bring in outside contractors to make sure that the process was okay. And we've seen that happen in other areas in Harris County. We've had confidence that the elections were handled fairly, but when you throw in people who are those support the big lie, and consort with them, then it doesn't bode well for one of the bluest counties in Texas to go to that type of leadership.
You hit something that I want to talk about in a little bit before, as our second to last question. But beforehand, I just want you to express yourself. When I was growing up, we had a term that said, "You sleep with dogs, you lie with dogs, you rise with fleas." Or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I screw these things up, but you understand what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, yeah.
And so you pointed out what you did is you made a list of some close supporters, people that have given donations, people that she's given interviews to,
Mhm.
etc. That put some of the values that makes her squarely not of the values of Harris County. Who are some of these folks, and why do you find them suspect?
Sure. So we want to start with Doc Green. And like I mentioned before, he is one of those rampant anti-LGBTQ bigot, I
Mm-hmm.
guess you can say. And he has come to a drag queen, like when they read books to kids at the library, and he has come in full, gun regalia and had to be, escorted off and made a scene. We also have Mary Talley Bowden, and she has, a huge anti-vax platform. And she, we want to make sure that we don't make any regression on COVID policies. And so when you look at someone who could be county judge making that plan, we want to make sure that it's founded on science and not on falsehood. So again, that's someone that we don't want to have associated with our county judge. Angela Box is another LGBTQ. Um, she's a activist. She's a former teacher, and I am really concerned with her characterization of um, LGBTQ community members, and her uh, linking it with Satan and demonic images. That's really concerning. As an educator, I find that egregious that she would have been in the classroom at all. And then we have Beverly Omar Roberts, and she's involved with this really scary group called the Concerned Women for America, and they're pretty regressive, and probably would align with Phyllis Schlafly, here and now. And I'd be really concerned about having somebody with an ear to the county judge who has these anti-choice, anti-gay, and anti-sex ed um, attitudes. And I cannot, I we're already facing a lot of regressive policies, with the overturning of Roe, and what the Texas legislative session of 23 is going to bring, it kind of sends shivers down my spine. So we need to hold on to these bastions of freedom where we are able to protect people and uplift people rather than punish people for who they are and their differences.
Now, Texas, and I noticed you also in your article point out that apparently she has good communication with Ted Cruz, and we all know
Yeah,
who Ted Cruz is. But here
yeah.
is my my concern now, and maybe you can help me here. Texas, or rather Harris County, is a decidedly blue county.
Correct.
However, when it comes to Lina Hidalgo personally, I think I've seen too many shenanigans from folks on the blue. Specifically, we have right on the main page of Lina's opponent, and I always forget Alexandra's name,
Mhm.
I see exactly what Alexandra del Moral is doing. I know exactly what's going. I know the mechanics that she's hoping to
Mhm.
use there.
Mhm.
Okay, it's understood.
Yeah.
But that said, why is it that one a progressive woman in a progressive county should have any issues other than maybe being helped on her side?
So I will say that I was very pleased that Lena had a decisive win in the primary at the primary stage
Mhm.
with like 70% of the
Without
vote,
any hesitation,
right?
yeah.
And so I think that it's a time for all of us to realize that um, countywide, there is no stronger candidate than Lena Hidalgo. She needs to continue to talk about all of the programs that she's facilitated, like Harris Thrives, like making sure that the meetings are continue to be
Open.
transparent. Yes, open. And a lot of people have complained about the length of the meetings, but I have learned more in the time, her tenure, about the processes and the procedures of the commissioner's court than I ever had in my prior years. And also just continuing her commitment not to take donations from anyone who may have county business with the county. I have seen no such promise from Neeler's campaign, and furthermore, her list of contributors is, a very select few who want to change that trajectory because they're just simply not comfortable with seeing, I would argue, Latina in power who's effective and graceful, and they're trying to undermine her at every turn.
Well, I actually look at it as Latina, but not only Latina, but very young and
Yeah,
very abled.
yeah,
And that is the scariest thing. Somebody that's young and able is going to be there for quite a while.
correct,
Now
correct.
that said, I think it is imperative. It is good that people like yourself are writing articles and making sure that this type of information is dispersed. Because one of the things that I found too often is that folks, many folk believe that just because they're right, just because they've done nothing wrong, just because they are, that people will eventually see it. That's not how it works in today's politics. You have to do
Mhm.
exactly what you, Diana Martinez, did with the article that you wrote. I hope that they're more forthcoming as you do more of your investigative type reporting. I really hope so. So in closing, why don't you tell me something that I should have asked you, or things that I should have asked that I didn't touch on, so that you can, lay the groundwork for why it is that you wrote what you wrote, and why it is
Mhm.
that it's evident that you're a supporter of the current judge.
Well, I want to say that we need to do whatever we can at every level of government to protect the sanctity of our democracy. And if we want to avoid an audit I mean, we're already getting an audit from the state for our election, and it seems kind of coincidental that we were chosen, our county was chosen for an audit, right? I think that was probably by design. Um, but
Let
if
me interrupt
we
one
want,
second. Let me interrupt one second.
yeah,
We should fear no audit because we know we do things by the book.
correct. Absolutely. We shouldn't fear one, but I think that if they're trying to manufacture a crisis like they
Mhm.
have been doing, then it's easy to put us in the spotlight and say, "Oh, we're being audited." And that kind of purports that we are have wrongdoing even when there's none. Um,
And let me again an interruption again. One of
yeah.
a lot of these things are narratives. A lot of these things are impressions. I sure hope that folks will come right out and say, "We welcome your audit. Come
Yeah,
on in. Make a fool of yourself." Because we here in Harris County, we know who we are and we know
right.
what we do.
So the only issue with that is that the people who are conducting the audit may not may be biased, and
They
again,
will be.
maybe
They will be
yes,
biased. They will be
yes,
biased. And my ask to you is, and I don't know this, this is above my pay grade,
yeah,
but can we, as this audit is going along, make sure that they're always shadowed?
right.
I
Yeah,
don't know. I'm asking you.
absolutely. Right. No, I think that that would make sense for the elections office to have that process and procedure in place to make sure that everything is above board. But the county judge has an important role in that and could ask for maybe another audit that is done by a contractor that we wouldn't necessarily have as much control over. And so that is the fear, because we are making progress in Texas and they're doing all of these things because they are afraid of the strides we have made in making Texas a more progressive place. And that's why all of these oppositions and all of these laws are coming at a last gasp, but we have to stay strong, stay focused, stay engaged, and keep on moving forward.
Well, Diana Martinez, do you have anything else to say that you want to point out?
No, I think that's it
Well, let
for
me tell you
now.
something. First of all, I want to thank you for what you're doing. I think the article, the investigative reporting that you've done is essential. I think more progressives need to engage like you have, because that is the only way. I mean, I always say the other side have Coke, the Koch brothers, that is. All we
Mhm.
have is you.
Mm.
And with the work that you do, I think it's very important to, again, sunlight is the best type of disinfectant.
That's right.
And I think with your article, that's what you've laid. Diana Martinez Alexander, a progressive leader and activist here in Houston, Texas. Thank you so kindly for having been
Thank
on Politics
you.
Done Right. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.